This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Muteli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. China making its most concerted push to whip its economy into shape. Its leaders now pledging to deploy necessary spending to meet this year's growth target of about 5%. Now, in the lead up to Japan's LDP race for the premiership, we spotlight Sanae Takaichi, who's making a renewed bid to become the country's first female leader. China says it's on the alert after a Japanese warship made a first-ever transit of the sensitive Taiwan Strait. And South Korea's spy agency reveals that the North has enough uranium to produce dozens of nuclear weapons and warns of a possible seventh nuclear test after the U.S. presidential election. And ahead on East Asia tonight, from building connectivity to growing startups, China's Greater Bay Area is setting itself up for a leading role in the global economy. But will geopolitical tensions tamp down its lofty ambitions? And what's driving South Korean teachers to despair, and even some to suicide? We take a closer look at the pressures the teachers are facing. Before we get to our top stories on East Asia, here's an update on the train service disruption here in Singapore, where transport authorities say full service on the East-West line will not be restored tomorrow, and this could take days to achieve. Authorities are working to restore service on one track between Jurong East and Buona Vista to provide a shuttle train every 20 minutes. An update will be given later today if this can be done tomorrow. Well, at a news conference, authorities shared that engineers worked through the night to assess the damage. They found 34 cracks across 1.6 kilometers of tracks, among others. And to complicate matters, recovery works had to stop for more than 4 hours today due to a heavy downpour.
My team and I have worked hard throughout the night, and we are doing our very best to recover train services safely on the affected stretch. The safety of our commuters and staff is our topmost priority. We continue to work closely with LTA to resolve this.
Well, on Facebook, the Transport Minister says tests and checks have to be done to ensure commuter safety before full service can resume. He was speaking from Beijing, where he is attending a global forum.
We will also look for ways to cushion and mitigate the impact on affected commuters on the ground. On behalf of the One Transport family, I would like to offer my sincere apologies to all our commuters for the disruption. Our workers are doing their best to safely restore train services as soon as possible.
And for more, we are joined now by CNA's Geraldine Yap. She's reporting live from Buona Vista MRT station in Singapore with the very latest. Jerry, basically, what are some of the latest updates you're getting regarding the train disruption in Singapore?
Yes, Tally. So the evening rush hour has just started here in Buona Vista, and I did see that the line for the bus has been steadily growing, but it's there's no sight of the crazy queues and the crazy crowds that we saw here yesterday, at least not yet. And I took a walk around the area just now. I observed that most commuters seem to be taking things in their stride, and after all, it is the second day of the disruption, so I think many of the commuters would know what to expect when it comes to the traffic and transportation arrangements. Now, we understand that about 358,000 commuters were affected by the disruption on the East-West line yesterday, and an estimated 516,000 will be affected today as well. But so far, it seems like everything is quite orderly. There are staff on the ground, including police officers, staff from the SMRT, the MRT operator, as well as the Land Transport Authority, to guide people where to queue, which bus to take to go in which direction. And there have also been cordons set up to guide people to the right queues. Now, I understand that over 600 ground staff have been deployed to help out to manage the situation so far.
And Jerry, what about the traffic arrangements, though? I mean, how are those affected?
Now, so we understand that there have been 80 double-decker buses deployed to ferry the affected commuters across the affected stretch. And I understand that there were it's not just buses from SMRT, but also the other public transport operators. They have chipped in to help out by providing not just buses, but also bus captains as well to help to ferry the affected commuters. Now, there are also shuttle trains that are running outside of the affected stretch between Jurong East and Buona Vista, so that's also helping to take some of the load off the shuttle buses. Now, these arrangements will continue all throughout tonight, and we also expect them to continue tomorrow as well, because we understand that normal train service will not resume tomorrow. Now, SMRT has said that they are aiming to at least restore partial train service tomorrow, so we'll have to see what happens on that front as well.
Right, many thanks for that report, CNA's Geraldine Yap. Back to East Asia now, and it is time for business news with Roland Lin. And Roland, it appears that China is making a real concerted effort to revive its economy.
That is indeed the case, Oteli. President Xi Jinping trying to spearhead a push coming from the top leadership right down to the local governments to ignite growth. Now, China is making its biggest push to orchestrate a broad-based economic recovery. Helmed by President Xi Jinping, the ruling party's top decision-making body pledged to arrest the decline in China's property sector and spend to help meet the growth target of around 5% this year. On the local level, governments are instructed to give rare cash handouts to residents before the 1st October National Day week-long holiday. Now, in an unusual Politburo meeting today, chaired by President Xi, officials called for the forceful implementation of interest rate cuts. They also said China would make good use of its special sovereign bonds and local government debt to fund investment. The pledges comes days after China's top financial authorities unveiled a series of stimulus measures which include cuts to mortgage rates and the cash requirement ratios for banks. The world's second largest economy is battling deflationary pressures due to a steep property slump and frail consumer confidence, which has exposed its over-reliance on exports in an increasingly tense global trade environment. After a wide range of recent economic data missed forecasts, economists are doubtful China could meet its growth target. More worryingly is the longer-term structural slowdown that could be in play. Now, these are pushing Beijing to unveil a series of measures in rapid-fire succession, especially after piecemeal efforts in the past 2 years failed to boost growth. The pledges also raise expectations for more stimulus. For one, China is reportedly thinking of injecting up to $142 billion in capital for its largest state-owned banks, potentially to prepare them to take on more credit risks. These latest developments fueling more gains in Greater Chinese equities. The aggressive stimulus announced earlier this week already unleashing animal spirit in the markets. Shanghai adding 3.6%, its highest closing level in June, and logging its 7th straight consecutive session of gains. Shenzhen doing better, 4.4% up, and the Hang Seng Index hitting a 14-month high within reach of that key 20,000 level. And the Chinese currency, CNY onshore, ending the domestic session at 7.019 to the dollar. That's its strongest level in 16 months. Market watchers remain upbeat that the recent rally still has further upside potential. And joining us to unpack this rapid-fire series of announcements from China is Qi Wang. He is Chief Investment Officer, Wealth Management at UOB Kay Hian, joins us now live. Qi Wang, good to have you on our show. These rash developments and announcements, looks like the leadership is really making a big push to meet the growth target. Now, with all these taken together, will it make a real difference to China's economy?
It's too early to tell. We just learned a series of policies this week. I would say that will be the critical factor. You said earlier about the markets. That will be the critical factor whether Hang Seng Index can go beyond 22,000 or even 26,000. Looks like today it already almost crossed 20,000, which is a very encouraging sign. But we do need, like you said, more solid macro data points to prove that these policies are working. Especially very important is the real estate market in China.
Also, based on the latest announcements and the reported plans, Chi Wang, what is the tally on the size of stimulus so far? And I'm curious to know, how does that compare with what China launched in 2008?
Yes. In 2008, we launched about there's this mystery number, about 4 trillion. Exactly how much we spent, not sure, but let's assume in 2008, that was a 4 trillion RMB number. The PBOC announcement released 1 trillion RMB of liquidity into the system by reducing the triple R. And there is the 0.5% cut to the mortgage rates, which times, let's say, 40 trillion of the total mortgage, existing mortgage, that's 200 billion of extra money to the household. So plus or minus, we are looking at a number that's much less than what happened in 2008. And as you know, Wall Street has an estimate anywhere from 3 trillion to 5 trillion RMB a year that's needed to save China from the current deflation spiral. So definitely, whether versus 2008 or versus the street expectation, we're still under-delivering. However, I do want to point out that PBOC and the State Council this time did something very smart, is they are playing the expectation game. So PBOC not only just announced the policies and telling you what they are doing, but also telling you what they will be doing. So I think the rate cutting will continue with the triple R. That's what they're guiding. They are guiding continued cuts to the LPR, the loan prime rate, as well as the mortgage rates. And all these are good signs to the market. And that's why we are seeing a sustained rally in the market, because investors tend to extrapolate based on these policy expectations.
Chi Wang, circling back to the ailing property market, I know the oversupply situation in China is a long-term problem, but for right now, though, are these measures enough to convince the Chinese to go out and spend and to buy houses again?
Also, really good question. I don't think that's what the market is looking for. I think the market is already used to the fact that the demand is going to be weak and inventory is going to remain high. And all we need to see is a bit of an uptick in either the real estate sales or real estate price, or even flattening. So it's just for context, Chinese real estate market has been going through an extended period of decline. This year, we have 9 consecutive months of declines, and not including the previous year's declines. So the expectation is extremely low. As long as we have even a small uptick in the numbers. But having said that, I don't expect that to happen soon. All we need is a bit of a good news out of the real estate market. Unfortunately, we don't have that right now. That's what's holding back the market so far. Back to whether people will buy. Yeah, demand is there. The real estate sales did not stop. It's just that, it's still lower year over year. We just need to have a minor, even a small uptick in that number will inject more confidence in both the real estate market as well as the stock market.
And I'm going to pick up on the cash handout where, the local governments, they were asked to ensure that these cash handouts reach the people before 1st of October, which is the 75th anniversary of the PRC founding. But do you think, that's a lot of money there to reach such a huge population in less than a week. Do you think that's going to happen?
It is. Well, happening in context is not that big of Shanghai, for example, they launched a 500 million RMB of stimulus checks. And I said the amount is laughable, but the effort is commendable because they're trying. You can clearly see they're listening to the market. They're trying to do things maybe in terms of scale. You mentioned the scale earlier is nothing compared to what they should be, but at least they're moving in the right direction. And don't forget, the reduction in the mortgage rate, that's almost like a stimulus check. So back of the envelope, if you times 0.5 percentage cuts to the mortgage, existing mortgage in China about 40 trillion, let's say plus or minus, don't hold me to that, 40 trillion RMB times 0.5% cut in mortgage, that's a $200 billion RMB to households that are paying mortgages. That's almost like a stimulus check. I don't think that all of that will go into consumption, but it's definitely positive for consumption. And on consumption as well, we are seeing patterns of people spending more on certain items and less on others. For example, what we're seeing this year is more on travel and tourism, despite the economic slowdown, and more on things like sportswear and things like communications equipment, which is more like a smartphone, seeing a recovery from the year before.
We will certainly be keeping a close eye on the macro picture in China. Thank you. That was T. Wang, Chief Investment Officer, Wealth Management at UOB Kay Hian. And that's all in business. Back to you.
Thanks so very much, Roland. Well, we're going to go for a short break now, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, could Japan see its first female prime minister after the ruling party vote tomorrow? Michio Ishida joins us later to read the tea leaves. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party will pick a new leader tomorrow. A record 9 candidates are in the race to replace Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Now, we profiled 2 frontrunners in the last 2 days. And today, Michio Ishida takes a look at the rest of the lineup, including Sanae Takaichi, who is making a fresh bid to become Japan's first female Prime Minister.
Sanae Takaichi is making her second attempt to shatter the glass ceiling. No woman has ever led Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party. Recent polls showed the 63-year-old economic security minister is gaining among rank-and-file members of the party, placing her firmly among the top 3 favorites.
国の究極の使命は国民の皆様の生命と財産を守り抜く、領土、領海、領空資源を守り抜く、そして国家の主権と名誉を守り抜くことだと思っております。そのためには今、すべての国力を強くしていかなければなりません。
Ms. Takaichi is known for her fierce loyalty to the hawkish policy of former Prime Minister, the late Shinzo Abe, when he was in power. In return, Mr. Abe threw his weight behind her last presidential bid, making her the new face of the right wing of the party.
Supporter among MP is also such kinds of tendency, and many are from former Abe faction.
49-year-old Takayuki Kobayashi is another hawk. It's the first time he's in the presidential race. He was economic security minister in the Kishida cabinet before Ms. Takaichi. Taro Kono is running in the top party post for the 3rd time. He's currently digital transformation minister. He held portfolios of foreign minister, defense minister, and minister in charge of COVID-19 vaccination.
改革をしっかりとスピードを持って深掘りをしていく、そのおかげで日本の経済が発展した、そう言われるような改革を断行してまいります。
In the 2021 race, in which he was among 4 candidates, he gained more votes from the local chapters than Fumio Kishida, but lost in the runoff.
He was most popular candidate among general public, but his popularity dramatically decreased in this year. One reason is, as a minister, he is outspoken, but there are many troubles relating to his work, but he didn't apologize.
Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi, also with a strong portfolio, having served as Foreign, Defense, Agriculture Minister, has been seen as a competent candidate. But Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa is also contesting. They were both members of the Kishida faction. The faction has been dissolved recently. Both of former members may split between them.
So here's how LDP will choose its new leader tomorrow. Lawmakers will cast 368 votes in the first round. An equal number of votes will be distributed among rank-and-file members. No candidate is expected to win a majority in the first round, so the top 2 vote-getters will move on to a runoff. And in the second round, each lawmaker again gets 1 vote, but the share of the rank-and-file drops to 47 votes. That is 1 for each of Japan's prefectures. More than 40 lawmakers still haven't decided who to vote for, so the results are still very much up in the air. Now, we talked about top contenders Shinjiro Koizumi and Shigeru Ishiba over the last 2 days. So now let's take a look at the remaining candidates with CNA's Michio Ishida joining us live from Tokyo. First up, Mitch, today we're going to start with Sanae, Takaichi and Yoko Kamikawa. I'm just wondering, is Japan close to getting its first female prime minister? Because if that happens, it will be historic.
Yes, it will be. And the possibility is the highest ever. Now, there were women running in past party elections, but never have women lawmakers been regarded as the top runner. Now, media polls suggest Sanae Takaichi is in a tight race along with Shinjiro Koizumi and Shigeru Ishiba out of the 9 contenders. Now, in the party election, a majority vote is needed to win, but no one is expected to gain a majority, and critics all agree that a runoff will take place. And they predict either Ms. Takaichi versus Mr. Koizumi, Ms. Takaichi versus Mr. Ishiba, or Mr. Ishiba versus Mr. Koizumi. So far, we have not seen Ms. Yoko Kamikawa's vote increasing.
So Ms. Takaichi, well, she is kind of known for her hawkish policy stance when the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was in office. And I'm wondering, are other LDP members, are they in favor of her stance?
Well, since official campaigning for the presidential election kicked off earlier this month, support for Ms. Takaichi began to strengthen, especially among the rank-and-file members. Her message seems to have resonated with party members. She has a strong position on protecting Japan first and foremost. She supports further advancement of defense capability and space, cyberspace, and electromagnetic spectrum. She wants Japan to be ready to counter military drones, ultrasonic weapons, and AI-installed arms. She wants to remove installations by China around the disputed islets in the East China Sea. And she is believed aiming to step up the policy of the late Mr. Shinzo Abe. Her hawkish stance has been represented by her regular visit to the Yasukuni Shrine. Now, she said she plans to visit as prime minister, but this is not going to be good for Japan's ties with its neighbors. The shrine honors war dead. What makes it controversial is Class A war criminals are enshrined too. Whenever prime ministers have gone there, it drew anger from China and South Korea, hurting ties. But her visit could be received with cheers from right-wing conservatives in the LDP. Now, gaining the backing of the Abe faction is also crucial for her, and it's expected to be dissolved soon for its links to political fund scandals, but it's still a faction, and Ms. Takaichi could gain strong support from the Abe faction members.
So she is still one of the top 3 contenders, but I want to talk about Taro Kono there, who used to be, another front runner, but he has a very impressive track record, but unfortunately his star is dimming. What exactly happened there?
Yes, well, he used to be popular among the public. Oh, he was outspoken. He's strong. He has strong stance towards policies. He was seen as a reformist. In the last party election, he won more votes than Mr. Kishida from the rank-and-file members. But in the runoff, even though he gained more votes than Mr. Kishida from prefectural representatives, he could not win without enough backing from Diet members. Since he became Digital Transformation Minister in the Kishida cabinet, public support for him declined. He has been under fire for requiring residents to own ID card called My Number Card and united with the health insurance scheme. And in addition, he's been calling for it to be used to declare tax. Now, he did not address seriously COVID-19 vaccination side effects when he was minister in charge. He is known to be active on X. He's been criticized for blocking critical comment. And another reason he's not supported by the public anymore is he remains a member of a faction, Aso faction to be specific, which Mr. Kishida wants dissolved. Now, the correlation between factions and political fund scandals were in the spotlight since the end of last year, but Mr. Kono didn't leave the faction, and as a result, his speculated standing in the race is currently 7th or 8th out of 9 candidates.
Well, thanks very much for that analysis. We're all looking forward to the LDP leadership race tomorrow. CNA's Michio Ishida in Tokyo. Are coming up on East Asia tonight, we explore the potential and challenges facing China's Greater Bay Area with CNA's Deborah Wong and our special guest, Professor Hei-Wai Tang. China making its most concerted push to whip the economy into shape. Its leaders now pledging to deploy necessary spending to meet this year's 5% growth target. China says it's on the alert after a Japanese warship made a first-ever transit of the sensitive Taiwan Strait. And South Korea's spy agency reveals the North has enough uranium to produce dozens of nuclear weapons and warns of a possible 7th nuclear test after the U.S. presidential election. As China marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic, a massive plan to connect 11 southern Chinese cities with a combined GDP larger than South Korea turns 5 this year. Well, the Greater Bay Area comprises cities in Guangdong Province, Hong Kong and Macau. It's connected by an extensive network of railways, bridges and ports, including mega structures like the Shenzhong Link and the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. China has 2 Tier 1 cities in the GBA alone, which means they each have a GDP of more than $300 billion. Well, CNA's Deborah Wong looks at how the region is repositioning itself as it seeks to burnish its image as a vanguard of reform.
A new 24-kilometer bridge now winds across the Pearl River estuary, cutting travel time between 2 major southern cities of Shenzhen and Zhongshan by more than half. The US $6.7 billion megastructure has 8 lanes, 2 bridges, 2 artificial islands, and an undersea tunnel. It's now become a symbol of the region's ambitions to take opening up to a new level, as it positions itself as a key node in the Belt and Road Initiative with connectivity at its heart.
Here in the Greater Bay Area, that connectivity is meant to create a 1-hour living circle, which means you can get to anywhere within the Greater Bay Area within an hour. And I've just taken a train from Hong Kong to Shenzhen North Railway Station. Excluding the time taken to clear customs, the actual commute was only 18 minutes. And the idea is to create a seamless flow of people, not just across cities, but across the border.
That's playing out in a quiet district on Shenzhen's west coast, where Hong Kong University just opened an academy for tech entrepreneurs. The district is connected to Hong Kong by Shenzhen Bay Bridge.
大湾区的腹地无限广阔，前景无限广阔，这都是我们可以大展手脚，发展事业的好地方。
China had lofty ambitions to turn Qianhai into the next Hong Kong, with plans for unfettered information access. But as proposals fell through more than a decade ago, the district's appeal soon waned against the rise of central Shenzhen. It is now trying to revive development by giving tax subsidies to eligible firms and to Hong Kong residents working in the zone. Porkfield Technology is joining the ranks.
前海这个它是更多的是鼓励我们去创业，是以 company 以公司的形式在这里。 所以从 tax 方面以及从一些租金方面，对我们来说都有很大的优势。
It will be some time before Qianhai reaches the level of Shenzhen. As China's first special economic zone, Shenzhen set a high bar. Its GDP has now surpassed Beijing and Shanghai.
The new generation in China, they're more educated, more open-minded, and there's a higher tendency of these young entrepreneurs or talents, professionals, wanted to seek and learn more about the global business. People in Shenzhen, in Guangzhou, they can speak English, they understand what they don't know, and that they are eager to learn more.
Anhui native Kevin Wang had a head start entering the growing South. He co-founded a 3D printing startup back in 2015 that's gained popularity in the US.
More and more, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in Shenzhen, they are talking about building their own brand, how to make that brand more popular. Building a brand is definitely going to help with your business growth.
It's a departure from the past. Given its reputation as the world's factory, Guangdong has long prioritized heavy production lines over brand building. E-commerce has changed the game.
In Shenzhen, they will have a policy for cross-border e-commerce companies, especially you are building up your own brand and have your own D2C website. If your sales revenue is over a certain standard, for example, like $1 million per year, they will give you 1 million RMB as a reward for your business.
Deeper integration has also taken place as new rules allow easier movement of people into the mainland.
Talk about infrastructure, but it's really the people that matters. Hong Kong or Macau who are non-permanent residents can now apply multiple entry visas. The same thing is happening with Guangdong citizens within this GBA. I'm bullish with where the country is heading into.
And for more on how the Greater Bay Area will figure in China's next stage of growth, we are joined now by CNA's Deborah Wong and Professor Hei Wai Teng, Director of Asia Global Institute at the University of Hong Kong. Well, thanks very much for joining us, both of you. Let's start with you first, Deborah. I'm curious to know that China's laid out this ambitious plan right back in 2017 to turn this whole Greater Bay Area into a high-tech powerhouse. You know, with 2035 as its target to rival Silicon Valley and Tokyo Bay, can you give us an update in terms of their progress? I mean, are they on track to meet those goals, or are there hurdles slowing down the progress?
So the GBA generated about 11% of China's GDP, and that's significant, but there are still institutional gaps. So when we look at the GBA, it comprises cities in Guangdong and also 2 special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. So what that means is we are seeing 3 distinct legal systems and capital account regimes. And, you know, the main challenge is really coordinating these regulatory differences, tax rates and controls to make it easier for businesses to branch out across the region. And we're seeing some progress on that front. You know, within the GBA, cities are already offering tax subsidies to win some Hong Kong SMEs over, like what you saw in the story. But there are also limitations to cross-border data transfers due to different privacy laws. So those are the challenges. But on the flip side, you know, the distinct system does allow some cities to retain their niche. Now, Hong Kong, for instance, remains a viable place for investors from the mainland who wish to manage their private wealth outside the mainland. And I attended a conference by DBS Group earlier this week where the group talked about its strategy in Greater China. Have a listen.
Through this year, we are opening close to 500 to 600 wealth individual accounts in Hong Kong, mainly from GBA customers. We are opening close to 700 SME accounts, mainly from GBA SME customers.
Every month.
Every month. That shows you that even though the economic growth is being questioned, there is a substantial amount of interest, both on wealth individuals as well as SMEs and corporates, to utilize Hong Kong as a first place of account opening and then later on diversify to ASEAN.
So because of the common law system, you know, Hong Kong is relatively more international as a platform. It really in itself allows it to remain a gateway, giving mainland investors exposure to the international world.
Right, Professor Tang, I want to bring you in here now. We just saw how the Greater Bay Area, they've been positioned to capture capital from these high-tech enterprises. But is the GBA story, in your opinion, appealing enough to stand against the geopolitics, you know, of the tech race that's happening as we speak?
This is a great question. We know the reason for why many of the leading technology companies in China today are subject to export controls or sanctions from the U.S. government is because of their successes. And many of these leading companies are actually located in the Greater Bay Area. For example, Huawei, BYD, Tencent. So I think, in general, the market in the GBA is big enough. We know there are 86 million people. The average GDP per capita across cities is over $22,000, which is much higher than China's GDP per capita. This is also one of the youngest region in China. It's also the region where you can find some of the best universities in Asia. Obviously, many of them are located in Hong Kong. So I see that this is actually a pretty resilient area with a pretty complete supply chains. a lot of young people, a lot of educated people. The next stage is actually more collaboration across the 11 cities located in the Greater Bay Area. One example is, there are a lot of research generated from universities here in Hong Kong, but a lot of this research has not been transferred into actual technologies or commercialized products and services. So there got to be a lot more collaboration. And currently, I see that many of these cities in the GBA are seeing each other more as competitors than collaborators.
That's a good point you make there. And that's what it is, right? I mean, Deborah, we're talking about how ambitious this project is. You're trying to integrate 11 cities, millions of people, trillions of dollars of economy. And what Professor said, collaboration itself, that is an issue. But what are some of the other bigger risks involved in terms of trying to fuse, such diverse regions so rapidly?
If integration helps to bring about more even regional developments, then yeah, it's a good thing. But what you don't want to see is an uneven flow of people to more prosperous cities after the connectivity gets improved. Although China has designated a niche for each of the city within the GBA, there are still some similarities that might result in intense competition. Shenzhen and Qianhai, they have similar niches in the commercial, fintech, even professional services fields, and Qianhai is well connected to the CBD in Shenzhen. It also has an airport that's close by. It's also close to a bridge that connects to Hong Kong. So when you look at all these assets, on paper, it is an attractive place to be, but it's quiet. It's quiet because most of foreign businesses are currently concentrated in central Shenzhen, where it's more mature. You have the strain on tourism, like for instance in Hong Kong, a lot of day trippers from China, they come into Hong Kong, but they rather return to Shenzhen to stay for the night just because it's cheaper. And that's causing a strain on the domestic consumption. Now, Professor, I have a question for you. With the GBA's rapid rise, we're seeing a big shift in Asia's economic landscape. And given the already fragile ties between US and China, do you think this could accelerate economic decoupling, or is there going to be a sort of new balance of power between these two juggernauts?
Deborah, it's very hard to be optimistic about the geopolitical situation, especially when it comes to the relationship between the US and China. As I have said, right, the success of the GBA, or generally the success of the economic transformation or technological catch-up of China, would only lead to more tension, more frictions between the two biggest economies in the world. So I guess, decoupling is not going to be feasible. I wish there are more sort of functional decoupling. For example, on technologies, I'm not hoping that, there will be collaboration between US companies and Chinese companies. But, on sustainability, on, sort of like traditional manufacturing, I hope that, the two countries will see each other as partners rather than competitors. Some people may even say that we are converging to a world which is called one world, two systems, rather than one country, two systems that we have in Hong Kong. I think, you're going to see separate development of technologies, on IT standards. One part of the technologies obviously is going to be used on this part of the world. Another kind of standards and technologies will be used on the other side, with US being the sort of central driving force.
Yeah, I like how you've coined it, Professor, one world, two systems. And we've been talking about this rather grim geopolitical situation. I want to take the tone down a little bit, speak to Deborah about actually your experience, traveling around the Greater Bay Area. I mean, the trains itself look very comfortable, but I'm wondering just exactly how convenient is it?
So just by the variety of options, it's convenient. Where I am based currently in Hong Kong, I have the option of taking a bus, high-speed rail, or even the regular train, the MTRs, when I make my way across the land border. But within the mainland, it actually does fulfill that 1 hour living circle, but there are still administrative challenges. Foreigners, for instance, including business travelers, we still must stand in line at the land borders for a long time. It's common
to see many people missing their trains. And because of that, people have to add about 1.5 hours to their commute. And then we have the problem also with the Hong Kong's southbound travel scheme for mainland registered vehicles. Now, Hong Kong plans to limit the number of vehicles entering the city from the mainland and Macau to ease the traffic congestion. And so what they're doing is that they're building about 1,000 car park lots on the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge. And it's already a scaled down figure from the earlier proposed 6,000 lots. So cars must park there, and then after that, they have to take a coach into the city. And it's kind of counterproductive because drivers are saying that it's inconvenient. I might as well just take the high-speed rail right into the city. So the whole idea to manage traffic congestion is actually going to be counterproductive to optimizing the megastructure.
Yeah, so still quite a fair bit of waiting time, huh? All right, well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today's discussion, but thanks so very much, CNA's Deborah Wong, as well as you, Professor Hei Wai Tang, Director of Asia Global Institute at the University of Hong Kong. All right, going to go for another short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, how South Korean educators are responding as they are pushed to the brink by rising workloads, harassment, and even lawsuits by parents. South Korea's spy agency says the North has resources to produce a double-digit number of nuclear weapons. Lawmaker Lee Sung-kun, who sits on the Parliamentary Intelligence Committee, says that Pyongyang has enough plutonium and uranium to do so. A previous report by the Federation of American Scientists concluded that North Korea may have sufficient fissile material to build up to 90 nuclear warheads, but it is likely that only about 50 have been assembled. Pyongyang says its arsenal of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles are necessary to counter threats from the U.S. and its allies. A South Korean lawmaker also says that the agency sees the prospect of North Korea carrying out a seventh nuclear test after the U.S. presidential election in November. Earlier this month, North Korean state media publicly disclosed details of its uranium enrichment facility for the first time. Now, the report showed a visit by leader Kim Jong-un. Mr. Lee says that this could be sending a message to the U.S. ahead of its presidential election, or an attempt to boost confidence among the population among the extremely dire economic situation. China says it's highly vigilant after a Japanese warship crossed the contested Taiwan Strait for the first time. Beijing's foreign ministry has lodged a complaint with Tokyo, questioning Japan's political intentions. Local media reported that Japan's Sazanami destroyer sailed from the East China Sea yesterday, but the Defense Ministry has yet to confirm the passage. This is the latest in a series of crossings by allies of the United States to mark the strait as an international waterway. New Zealand's Navy says it also sailed a military vessel through the Taiwan Strait yesterday with an Australian guided missile destroyer. This is the first time New Zealand has done so in 7 years. A defense official stressed that this was a routine activity which had nothing to do with Japan's transit. On East Asia Tonight, we've previously touched on the challenges faced by teachers in South Korea. Their workload is increasing while having to face abusive students, complaints, and even lawsuits from parents. Well, at least 100 educators have taken their lives since 2018. Our weekly current affairs program, Insight, takes a deeper look into their plight.
A memorial service has been organized for a Seoul elementary school teacher. She took her own life last July, and today is the first anniversary of her death. 37-year-old teacher Song On-yu is among the hundreds dressed in mourning black gathered at the memorial.
아이들 사이에 있었던 일로 인해서 학부모 민원을 겪으시고 여러 가지로 많은 힘든 일을 겪으시면서 세상을 떠나셨습니다. 그 뒤로 한 2-3주 굉장히 우울했어요. 왜냐면 저도 그때 내가 얼마나 열심히 아이들을 만났고 또 얼마나 내가 나의 중심을 잡기 위해 흔들렸었나 이런 그 시절에 제가 많이 떠올라서 마음이 많이 아팠습니다. 아무래도 2023년 7월은 대한민국 교육계에 굉장히 충격적인 달이었고
In a survey last year, only 24% of teachers were content with their career, compared to 68% in 2006.
지금 현재 저희 나라의 교육 정책이 교육을 서비스화 시켰어요. 그러면 학부모들은 소비자가 되는 거잖아요. 저희는 생산자가 되는 것이고. 그렇기 때문에 그 서비스와 시장화가 되기 시작하면 소비자의 입맛에 맞게 교육이 바뀔 수밖에 없는 것이고, 그러다 보면 저희가 손님이 왕인 것처럼 소비자의 중심적으로 교육이 바꿔질 수밖에 없는 거죠.
And what the customers or parents want is their children's academic success. South Korea is one of the most educated countries in the world. About 70% of Koreans aged 25 to 34 completed tertiary education, the highest proportion in the world. And academic success means much more than good grades here. It's traditionally defined by which university one attends. Many students fight for a spot in the SCAR universities, Seoul National University, Korea University, and Yonsei University, the most prestigious in South Korea.
스카이를 나오면 그 이후에는 뭔가 좋은 직장, 우리가 흔히 얘기하는 대기업 이런 데를 들어갈 수 있는 조건이 된다고 얘기를 하고요. 그걸 통해서 그 다음에 이제 좋은 직장을 가지면 그 다음에는 계속 이어지는 뭐 결혼이라든지 그 다음에 뭐 아이를 갖는다거나 했을 때 그 이후에 그렇게 노력을 하는데 결국 이제 들어가는 입구는 굉장히 하나로 좀 정해져 있기 때문에 굉장히 뽑는 인원은 굉장히 적은데 결국은 여기 전부 다 들어가려고 하기 때문에 경쟁률은 굉장히 높아질 수밖에 없는 거고 그러다 보니 더 치열해진 경쟁이 생길 수밖에 없는 거죠.
In the pressure cooker environment of South Korea's education race, teachers say some parents place unreasonable expectations on them.
저희가 조사한 바에 의하면 학부모들이 교사한테 민원을 제기할 때 내 아이를 앞줄에 앉혀주세요. 내 아이가 시험을 잘못 쳤으면 시험을 다시 치세요. 내 아이가 사진의 주인공으로 나오지 않았으니 여행을 다시 가주세요. 모든 학부모가 그러진 않겠지만 지금 현재 저희가 출산율이 아이 한 명을 키우는 상황에서 이 아이한테 모든 그 부모들이 관심이 집중되고 있기 때문에
This pressure from parents was the main reason almost 600 teachers quit their jobs between March 2022 and April last year. These were young educators who had taught for less than 5 years. In May, a survey showed that 6 in 10 teachers have thought of changing jobs, a sentiment Onju shares.
교사는 정년이 보장이 되어 있는데 교사라는 직업이 참 무력한 것 같다 이런 것도 많이 느꼈고 솔직히 뭐 3년 후, 5년 후에 제 교사로서의 모습은 별로 그려지지 않습니다.
And for more, you can catch the Insight episode tonight at 9 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time on CNA. And you can also watch it on CNA Video On Demand or CNA Insider's YouTube page. Well, on that note, we wrap up East Asia tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. Thanks for watching.